All right, we'll call the meeting to order. I don't know, I have like 7:01 or
Perfect.
2 or so. And welcome, everybody. And I hope you enjoyed the nice weather and then the actual real fall crappy weather the last week. But number of items on the agenda tonight. Start with any public participation. Seeing none.
Okay.
We want to review the minutes, Steve. You want to go right down the list? What's your
Sure, I
pleasure?
think, why don't we go down the list so we don't forget? We have Finance Committee Forecasting Subcommittee minutes of October 7th, 2021.
Right.
That was in your package. I think that's either Dan, I guess Dan, it's you.
Yeah,
And we don't have Dawn, so maybe we'll wait on that one.
I was gonna say, I don't think I can approve it to myself.
Right, okay.
I have to wait for Don. Hopefully Don will come on.
Yep, so we'll defer that one. And the other one I sent out, or we were given, here comes Don now, was the Finance Committee meeting we did on June 24, 2021.
I will,
We approve the minutes. Of
I will,
June 24th.
I will second Joe's motion.
Any discussion on the minutes from June 24, 2021? Okay, all those in favor of the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, unanimous. Dawn, good evening. How are
Good
you?
evening.
You were an integral part of the attendance tonight, so we're going to go back to the Finance Subcommittee forecasting minutes.
I will move approval.
I'll second.
Discussion. All those on the subcommittee in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Perfect, thank you.
Very good. Excuse me. The next item would be the review of fiscal year 21 and an overview from the forecasting committee. The minutes we just approved, the forecasting committee met in September. I sat in on that meeting along with Steve and Kevin. And why don't we go with the review of 2021, Steve?
Sure, I believe in the package, everybody got the year-end report for fiscal year 21. I'm happy to report that the town departments did very, very well in returning money to the town, and they did return a amount of about $1.4 million from the department heads. Our philosophy has been over the year that we don't, we don't penalize departments if they don't spend all their money. We do look for trends, and we have some very good discussions on that with this board, and Kevin and I certainly enjoy them, but I think they did a real good job this year in a tough year. They also encumbered a lot of money, particularly the schools, for next fiscal year, and I think that is might be a discussion for the school department when they do talk to that, because that was a fairly significant amount. But 1.3 million that'll be spent in this fiscal year for them. Snow and ice also proved to be a good year, where we actually returned $44,000, and which is always nice to have that instead of an overdraft. So I think that was really what we expected to come in. I think what we're very pleasantly surprised with was the fact that our income on our receipts was basically about 1.5 million more than we had anticipated going into the year. So that put us in much better shape than we thought. I think we had planned for the worst, and are very pleasantly surprised. And this might be a great segue to turn it over to maybe Dan, if he wants to briefly share his forecast, because that looks a lot better than it did when we spoke in, I guess, in April.
Yeah, Dan, just before that, does anybody have any questions on the report and the appropriations and the balances? Okay, I do. Steve, I don't know if you can answer it, but can you look at the school section for me?
Yeah,
And so there was federal money. I'm doing this on behalf of Doug. I don't see Doug here yet. I'm sure he'd be talking about this, Doug Butler. But when you look at the education on page 12, they had negative fund balances for purchase of services, materials and supplies. They returned quite a bit on personal services. And they figured out a way to encumber or use most of it. And I'm not saying that they didn't, but I know we had so much money or a substantial amount of money from federal government grants and aids and so forth. Again, I don't know if you have any insight into it, Steve. I didn't talk to Doug Lyons before.
yeah. Boy, and I didn't see Doug Butler on and didn't think we had a question on this, so. Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Kevin, can you add anything? Because my off the cuff message is that the ESSER funds and the other amounts they got is outside of this. We're talking about town money. And I think, I don't know if a lot of this was special ed items or what have you. But Kevin, can you add anything on that? Because they would have run that by you. You're on mute, by the way, Kevin. Sorry. Probably wants to stay there.
I know the school did encumber quite a bit of money for that they can prepay sped tuitions. So some of this may have been the prepaying of that they carried forward money to prepay special ed expenses. But this has been similar to what the school has done in the past, that they usually run a very tight budget, and at the end of the year, if there's money available, they will encumber it, carry it forward, and spend money at the end of the year for supplies at the beginning of the following year. So it's a little bit more than usual. Last year, I think it was maybe $780,000, but this was a strange year with a lot of federal funds coming in. So I think that's why they ended up with a little bit more than they usually do.
All right. Evan, I think you have your hand up.
Yeah, and I raise a comment like this about twice a year, but you know, I think $1.4 million is a good chunk of money to return, you know, back to the general fund as a budget surplus. You know, even if you cut it in half, you're adding 700 grand to your excess levy capacity, and I think that's a nice thing to do for taxpayers. But does the $1.4 million figure, does that include the school's surplus?
The school surplus, they and they held that over for next year. So no, the 1.4 million includes, I believe, of that 44,000 is from the schools, but let me check.
I thought it was 13,000.
13, I'm sorry.
Right, if you look at page, if you have the
No,
packet.
no, I'm sorry,
page-
I'm sorry. 72,000 is the schools.
Page 13 gave a little bit of a summary,
That'll
For,
give you each area of what was returned to the
general
town.
group, but
That also seems low, to Jim's point, for you know, given all the federal funds we got. But so how much did they encumber, by the way? Do you have a bottom line on that? I can look
On the
at
school
it. but-
department, on
Yeah.
in education, it was 1.3 million.
And encumbrances?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was all Wakefield Public Schools.
Okay.
Steve, for just the school department, it's only 13,000.
You're right. You're right. 13,000 for the schools. The rest was some other departments in education,
Right.
library in particular.
right, my concern was just that there were federal monies there. You know, materials and supplies, they overran by 427K, purchase services by 238. And again, it could be COVID related, those sorts of things, and the federal money didn't cover it. And it's potentially understandable in my mind. It was just, you know, they had some substantial balance. They had a 1.3 balance and encumbered just about all of it except for 13K. So that's the school itself, school department. Evan, you still there? Any other comments?
I'm good.
No, that's all I have.
So at the end of the day, the return was 1.39, Steve, is that right?
1.39
Great.
from the town side, from the municipal side of government. Again, life insurance, group health was 400,000 of that. So we continue to do a great job of moving people over after the budget is set into lower priced insurance policies through the GIC. And also, and sadly, this is part of the ghoulish part of the budget, is that there are people, retirees that pass away that we no longer pay health insurance on. So there's part of that there. I keep saying every year that number is going to shrink, and it has shrunk a little bit. It was 600,000 or 700,000, but that department does a really good job of almost sitting down employee by employee and saying, hey, within the GIC, you have this whole menu of carriers to go with. All your physicians and specialists are in this block, and it's going to cost you less a month and the town less a month. So they do a really good job with that. Finance committee returned 170,000 because we didn't have as many reserve fund transfers. So, that's almost half of what was returned between those two.
Very good. If I don't see any other comments, questions, we will roll into forecast overview, I think, Dan, or I think it's Dan, right?
I think
Unmute,
Dan.
Dan.
All right, good evening, everybody. So as Steve alluded to, the numbers came out a whole lot better than we were expecting. I was actually more pessimistic about the local receipts than Steve and Kevin were, and we beat that by a significant amount. And so because of that, and the return on, and the free cash came in quite a bit higher, which of course is directly related to that. So what I had last spring for free cash, for those of you may remember, is we were about $7.9 million. And the expectation was that would drop substantially over the coming years to somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 or 4 million, in 25, 26, 27 frame, and then start rebounding, going back. Well, that did not happen. Not only the local receipts came in much higher than expected, but also Victor keeps coming back with new numbers, and they keep going up in terms of new growth. So our new growth is, I think, looking at almost 1.8 million, if I remember the figure correctly. And so, 1,725. So instead of having, like, I had about $1 million of new growth, it's coming in at 1.7 million. So between those two elements, our free cash now on a projection is going to hang around $7 million for the next few years, and then start going up in 2025 to roughly 8 million, 10 million, and so forth. So some really good news there. I did put in a provision, if you will, for the VOC and their increase, because when the VOC puts in their new school, and we're getting charged, the estimate now is an extra 350,000 or something like that.
Oh, probably will be double that, Dan.
More or less 700,000. Yeah. Anyway, I put in a provision for the VOC to increase their portion. But again, we have $100 million budget, and the VOC is not that large. So even though I've increased it substantially, it did not have a huge impact long term. So right now, it's a completely different picture than what we had last spring, thankfully.
If I can jump in, Mr. Chairman, on the new growth number.
Yep.
For every year we talk about the pipeline, the electrical 345 kV line coming in, and how that is going to affect new growth, and we expect that bump. I will tell you that as of now, none of these numbers include that bump that's coming. That project, knock on wood, should be wrapped up and fired up and actually providing that new electricity to the substation this fiscal year that we're in now. So we should see that bump coming forward. So
Right, yeah.
keeps moving it out in his forecast.
Right, yeah, that's a good point. I missed that because I had that additional income in 22. I've now moved 1.2 million bump to 23 in the forecast.
The only other thing I would point out is, the other local receipts that came in better than we anticipated were building permit fees and local option meals tax, and that seems to be really holding through the first quarter of this fiscal year. So we're seeing still a lot of building going on, and it's a lot of not only the bigger projects that we all hear about, but there's a lot of additions and new just single family homes going on, and tenant fit outs at Audubon Road. So all these like small little hits that keep adding up every month. So that is bodes very well for us.
Very good. Any questions for Dan or Don associated with the forecast, or Steve? A bright forecast is a good forecast, right?
Yeah,
Better than we thought.
much better.
Absolutely. Okay. Do we want to move to the vote, Steve?
I think that'd be great.
Articles?
Yeah, on the articles, that's article number 4.
Right.
Joining us tonight, we do have the superintendent of schools, Dave DeBarry, the principal, Carlos Gazzarella, their business manager, James Pacone, their lobbyist, Charles Lyons. I think that Kevin Nigro's on, who is their OPM, as well as Brittany Carasella, who is our elected vocational school rep. I talk about the vocational school as our Wakefield second high school, and they've got a pretty exciting project going forward. They've worked hard, and I thank them for joining us tonight and agreeing to join us at that town meeting on November 6th. So I don't know how you want to do it, Mr. Chairman, but maybe Dave wants to say a few words, or Brittany, I don't know, whatever they decide.
Yeah, however, Dave and team want to go over the highlights. Go right ahead.
Sure. So, yeah, Brittany's traveling. I know she's listening, but I told her to drive safe to make sure, that doesn't affect, she doesn't get a traffic ticket out of this. So she is listening. And so what I'd like to do, if you have a couple minutes, and I know the game's on tonight, so we're all looking forward to getting to that. And, I'm not just saying I'm a Packers fan after the Patriots. I actually made that up I called an audible. So since one of our members is wearing a Packers shirt, they're now my second favorite team.
Well done. Well done.
But so I was just I've got like 7 or 8 slides, if that's okay. And I was gonna start out with the first couple, let Mr. Lyons jump in, and then have some of the team answer questions, if that works for the committee.
That's fine. Great. Thank
All
you.
right, so I'm gonna hit share screen. It's disabled. Can we enable that?
I think I can.
All right.
Yep.
All right, I tell you what, Dave, I'm gonna make you, because I don't really know how to do this, so I'm gonna make you the co-host so you can do it.
Okay.
And there you go. And you can hopefully do it right now.
All right, let's see. I am the co-host. There we go. All righty, let me just start this. All right. So there's our beautiful picture of Breakheart Reservation there. And, one of the things, Steve's been at the building committee meetings, and he's been involved all the way along. So one of the things he heard from us when we were designing it, we want a project that's going to fit into the landscape of Breakheart. So we didn't want to just drop some big, ugly building on that looks completely out of place. So that's one of our biggest missions, is trying to find a way to make this be incorporated into the landscape. And I can tell you, our architects, DRA, they're doing a great job with that. So if you can see on the right, there's a little bit of some red lines, and that pretty much carves out the land that belongs to Northeast. You probably saw the same picture when we were talking about the skating rink a couple of years back that none of us have given up on yet. So that's, where we own. Across the middle is Hemlock Road, going right out to where the current school is. And I'll talk a little bit about where the projected building is going to be in a couple slides. So this is really about going back, and I'll be brief on this, on why, we needed a new school. First and foremost, as Steve saw firsthand when we had a recent meeting in the parking lot because of a propane gas leak in the school, our building systems are failing. They are beyond their useful life. And absolutely, I don't have to talk to the building inspector to tell you they do not come close to meeting the current standards of a building. The envelope, and I know this was a big piece with some of the selectmen, is just, it's poorly insulated like any building built in the 1960s. And it's hard to even use energy efficient in the same sentence when I use Northeast. So that's a real big piece that we're hoping that this will fix. Many of the existing classrooms and shops are undersized. It really should say almost all. I believe we have one shop that meets the current standards for shop. All of the rest are grossly undersized. The building, and this is something I've dealt with as a special ed director, is not handicapped accessible. It is, the least accessible building probably in the entire area. We do what we can to make it work. We never turn students away, but the challenge is very, very big on dealing with any type of handicap, especially, somebody in a wheelchair. And we do get students in wheelchairs. We currently have a freshman, in fact. And something that's near and dear to our heart is that one entrance and exit going down the Hemlock Road, either when Wakefield High School is getting out or when there's an emergency, is to say congested again, nerve-wracking is more like it. I've stood there with the fire chief and the police chief, and it's not a good situation. So this is something, part of our project we're going to look at would be adding the second egress. Some of the highlights, as many of you have been through the project, is that MSBA wants to make sure that the new building is completely conducive to 21st century learning. So some of the things that we'll be able to do is configure the shops into career clusters. So right now the shops are spread out throughout the building the way they were set up in the 1960s, and they're completely distant from the academic classes. One of the most important things that we want to improve is the ability to cluster the academic classrooms with the shops so that they are learning in an academic environment that's related to their career field, so that there are a lot more connections and opportunity for learning when that happens. Project-based learning is essential. We have no space right now for any collaborative learning. And obviously with the classroom so small, it's a huge challenge to conduct any type of lesson plan that isn't your typical 23 student teacher in the classroom, which, the Wakefield superintendent would tell you that we're trying to get away from in all public schools. The safe and security is also a huge piece post 9/11, where we really want to get community involvement and community participation, but do it in a safe way so that people can't just walk in off the streets or come in from Breakheart and put our kids in an unsafe situation. To reiterate a little bit of what I said on the slide, it's again about the best match for the educational plan. So before we started any of the designing, we worked with a contractor that worked on the educational plan on what we would like to see educationally. We then would take that plan and work with our architect and our teachers and community on saying, now we're going to design the building to fit that, not vice versa. Going from 16 to 19 career tech programs is really going to give a lot more opportunities to our students. We did a lot of polling. We did a lot of surveys. We did a lot of background into what shops and what programs had the greatest job outlook in the near future, and also which ones the students were interested in. So I'm going to skip the next two because I'm going to pick up on that in future slides. But what we really did was, number one, we had to figure out how much the cities and towns potentially could afford. And that's definitely a subjective discussion, depending on what town we're speaking to. We started by looking at 1,250 to 1,722 students as being the range. So we knew that it was not likely we were going to be able to build a building larger than 1,700 students, because the fiscal impact would be dramatic, as well as, even though it seems like we have a lot of acreage of space, as you know, a lot of that is environmentally protected. A lot of it is a challenge to build on. So we had to first look at how many students we were going to build for. Then we had to look at a location that could fit that amount. So after many meetings with MSBA, with the community, with our building committees, we came to a number of 1,600. We felt that was enough to bring some students, or the majority of the students, off the wait list and give them an opportunity, but also not break the bank of our cities and towns, which, as you know, was a primary goal of ours. So we looked at a few options. We looked at a renovation, we looked at an addition and a renovation, and we looked at 3 possible sites for where a new building could go. So as you know, when you come up, the football field is on the left, right above the baseball field. Our hope initially was that we could fit a school there because that land was already leveled and it would have been easier. Unfortunately, we worked that site out with our architects, and a school for 1,600 students just would not fit there and meet our educational plan. That was the same behind the school. We have some land back there, and it was definitely going to be too small and probably had the most environmental impact. So what we settled on was a building that, if you're driving into Northeast, heading into the Breakheart area, you see a ledge up on the right, and we have acreage going all the way back to Farm Street. And even though there were some abutters in that area, there weren't as many abutters, and they weren't as tight to the project as they would have been in the back area had we even been able to build there. So that was the site that MSBA approved, and that's the site that we're looking to build on right now. So here is a picture of what our school hopefully will look like. And some of you who may have been on when we met last year, actually it was about 6 months ago, some of the neighbors had some concerns about how close we would be to I believe it was June Circle, and how much clearing we were going to have to do in site work. So we initially, the diagram we brought to you brought the building all the way up to the front where you see the mock parking lot. After hearing the concerns, we actually cut that back and added a floor up on top so that the site footprint wouldn't be as large. And there were, some other benefits gained from that. But primarily, we want to be, we want to appreciate you as a host, and we don't want to intrude and impact the neighbors, and people who walk break hard. So we're trying to do a good job responding to some of those concerns. So here's what the front might look like. I believe that's me in the middle, stenciled in there with a hat on. But this is probably going to be most likely the front door. So when you come in off the new road from Farm Street, that this would be the area that's actually the opposite of where Northeast is right now. So here's a list of, and this isn't a question that has come up from Wakefield a lot, but some of the other communities that weren't as involved with us really wanted to make sure that we were out there with the community and that we were putting the word out. And so I just listed some of the meetings we had gone to, some of the forums, some of the, we have a website, we have a Facebook page, and I probably made this slide, or we did, about a month ago. I think if I went back, I could probably double every single number on there. So we've been out there working it as a team every night and doing our best to put the word out. So this is where I'm going to turn it over to our consultant, Mr. Lyons, and he's going to pick up, and I'm going to play the role of Vanna White. Charlie, and just let me know when you want me to move on to the next slide.
Thanks, David. I hope you can hear me and see me. We might as well move on to the next slide at this point. But we're at the process with MSBA, as Steve Mayo knows. We're in the we're the end of the a 2-year process where 40 different options were looked at, 5 different enrollment scenarios, and we finally signed, or the district signed a project scope and budget agreement with MSBA back on August 25th. The clock starts then to acquire local town approvals and city approvals for 120 days. So that clock's going to end on December 23rd, 2021. I'm a retired superintendent. I'm not a lobbyist. I act as a consultant for David. I was the superintendent at Shushing Tech for 28 years. I worked with MSBA on 3 different projects. And I also have some experience in municipal finance, having served as an Arlington selectman for about 24 years. And so my real objective here is to assist David and assist the school board to get this project to fruition. This is the most wanted regional voc tech school in the state. They can now only accept about 41% of student applicants, and it is in dire need of reconstruction. It's 53 years old. If you walk into it, there's yellow tape in sections of the building because of unsafe conditions. Through a lot of efforts of a lot of people, including Mr. Mayo, the facility's been designed intelligently. For example, the access to the facility is going to be a new street built off of Farm Road to alleviate 3,000 high school kids daily using one street, Hemlock Road, both Wakefield High School and Northeast Voc Tech. The cost is expensive. There's no getting around it. The cost to build a new modern 21st century Voc Tech High School for 1,600 pupils is $317 million. The good news is that it received the largest MSBA grant award in state history. The grant that was voted back on August 25th was $141 million. That means the district needs to raise $176 million at this present time locally. That will be raised based upon a strict per pupil allocation methodology. It'll be bonded over a 30-year period. First couple of years will be bands to minimize the impact on all the local treasuries. I took a look and I know in Wakefield's situation, you send about 100 kids there a year, and that's been pretty stable for the last 7 years. You you use, your student population is about 7.8% of the entire population. And what that means is that the debt service you'll pay will be approximately 7.8% of total debt service for the next 30 years. It's going to go up and down based upon small shifts in enrollment, but it should stay pretty stable. The first 2 years impact to the Wakefield finances is $145,000. And that's because the district is going to go out and borrow $176 million tomorrow. It's going to utilize the MSBA grant accordingly and use as many of those funds the first few years of development. It will borrow when it needs to pay the contractors the money. This project's going to take 3 years to build. The major impact won't be felt by the town of Wakefield until fiscal year 26. So we're talking 3.5 fiscal years away. And that's because most of your construction is going to be done in the summer of 2025. The district has been conservative, and I think Steve, Mr. Mayo can speak to this, with respect to its assumed interest rate on its bonds. It's assuming, for example, an 80-year bond anticipatory note this year, interest only, and at a 3% rate, and it's assuming for just bonded indebtedness over 30 years, a 4% interest rate. We wanted to be conservative in terms of those projections, and we worked with the same financial advisor, Hilltop Securities, that the town has been working with, Peter Frazier. And so we presented now to a bunch of communities. We received a 1,600 to nothing vote at the Stoneham Town meeting for this project. It's expensive, but construction school costs in Massachusetts have gone up 130% since 2012. A similar project for 150 less students, 1,450 students, just approved by the Mass School Building Authority the other day at Bristol Plymouth, came in at $306 million. The total estimated state grant was $125 million. They'll be asking from their communities about $180 million. Diamond Regional down in Fall River, is the estimated cost at this point is $293 million for 1,500 students. And so in all of these costs are pretty similar to what's been experienced at the recent regional voc tech schools that have been built. I'll give you an example. Minuteman Tech in Lexington, which opened a year ago, cost $145.5 million, but the total state grant was only $45.2 million. The cost assessed to the local communities was $100 million, and they also asked and received $6 million to renovate their playfields in addition to that $100 million. Cape Cod Tech, which opened this September for 650 students, the total cost in millions to build was $121 million. The maximum state grant was $41.2 million. The cost to the member communities for 650 students was $75 million. So a 1,600 pupil school that takes into consideration the giant wait list that this school district has at an assessed cost to the communities of $176 million, believe it or not, is about $50,000 less per pupil than the Minuteman Tech project was. And the reason why the reimbursement is so high is twofold. There are poorer communities in the district, as you well know, Chelsea, Malden, and Revere, gateway cities, and they comprise about 49% of the school population. And in addition to that, we were able to modify the state budget a year ago, which meant an additional $25 million in MSBA aid to minimize the local impact of this project. And as others will attest to, the House budget came out the other day for the American Relief Funds, and there's a recommendation from Ways and Means. We've been asking our legislative friends to support another $300 million for these school districts because they represent gateway cities. And the House Ways and Means Committee came out and is recommending initially $100 million in additional funds to bring these project costs down. I don't know where that's going to end up with, so we're assuming, at least for tonight, until the Senate's budget comes out and there's some reconciliation of any differences, we're assuming an assessment over a 30-year period plus interest of 176 million at a 4% interest rate. You got to understand that between 1964 and 1977, most vocational education in Massachusetts was done at the basements of local high schools. Matter of fact, most of the kids that were in those programs had fifth lunch. And I was in Arlington when Minuteman Tech was built. I was on the school committee back in 1972. And we sort of took 4 or 5 programs per community, and they all had the same programs. And we built these wonderful state-of-the-art vocational technical school systems. They've all come of age. They've all come of age. They're extremely popular. Our hope is to get some additional money from the Commonwealth. And Steve, I'm working very closely on that. And his reps have been superb, as was Dr. Warren and others, trying to convince legislative leadership to provide funds for this project. And our hope is that we can speak to any community that might not support us at this point in time to change their mind between now and December 23rd and support this project. If they do, we'll have a winning project. If they don't, we're going to have an election, probably have an election in the middle of January, and it becomes a popular vote issue, but it still doesn't solve financial challenges. So our hope is that we can gain your support, your finance committee, and I want to congratulate your AAA community status. It wouldn't be there without a vigilant finance committee and a talented town management. I know that. But this is the time where we really need your help. And although I'm not a lobbyist, I'm more like a cheerleader here. I worked in a suburban district that was able to float 3 different bond issues when I was superintendent to do repairs to Shawshene Tech. And I worked in a community that's renovated every one of its school districts. It costs a lot of money, but to do nothing will be a disservice to the children that are blessed by this wonderful institution. And so your support's critical, and we appreciate the time tonight. And I'm here to answer any questions that any of the members like to pose, except for the guy with the Green Bay Packers shirt on. I really don't want to answer any of his questions.
Thanks, Charlie.
Chairman Sullivan, you have Joe Berthman stand up and Dan Sherman.
Yep, no, thank you. David, was there anybody else that you needed to speak? You want to go to the questions?
No, right to the questions is great.
Thank you. Yeah, Joe Bertrand, who is on our permanent building committee, I believe. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Yeah, I'm the chairman of the permanent building committee, and as you may know, we are looking at the high school project, our own high school project. The question I had looking at that schedule is that and indicated that you're going to be doing this construction primarily in the summer of 25. That's about the same time we're going to be finishing up, hopefully, our own high school. And the question I have is that other road going to be done prior to, so that the contractors and all the trades and everybody can use that other road rather than our own one lovely entrance to both schools?
Yep, 100%. So one of the first questions that I think PMA and Kevin posed with us to the contractors, Gilbane, was, can we get that road in right away? And will we be able to use that for construction and also, to store various materials in that area? So the answer is absolutely yes. We do not expect trucks going up and down Hemlock Road, except under rare circumstances.
Yeah, because, unfortunately, we may have a few as well going up in that area at that time. So that's one of the concerns I had. We would have a lovely truck traffic jam every day. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayo, this is Kevin. If I could just correct just a minor correction on the schedule. We would want to start our early site packages to develop that road and do some of the site clearing as early as next August of 2022. And then that would take our construction from August of 23 through 25, move the kids into the new school, demolish the old, build the fields, and be completed sometime in 2026.
Very good.
Good, thanks, Kevin.
Dan, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm curious about the cost numbers because I've got an adjustment in my forecast for this construction and when it's going to hit and so forth. And I want to make sure I get my numbers correct from what I just heard. So we're looking at about maybe 145 or 150,000 for fiscal years 22 through 25, roughly. And then,
Go ahead.
well, let's start there.
Yeah, the projections we're using, and this includes two borrowings in the BN, and the projection we're using is 145,371 for fiscal year 23, 22, yeah. 145,527 for fiscal year 24. Then in fiscal year 25, and again, we're doing more work then, obviously, it would go to 439, 126. And then in fiscal 26, that's about when you, start paying your yearly principal and interest, level principal, level interest of about 800,000 a year for the next 30 years. And you'll have it all off by 2055. It'll become less than 700 grand sometime in fiscal year 2053. Okay.
Well, I'm not going to worry about 2055.
Nor is the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers.
All right.
Hey,
Beautiful.
listen, there's a good chance some people on the screen could be here then, Dan. Just
That's
maybe not
true.
you and I.
Yeah, that's true. That's
I
true.
sure-
Absolutely.
Me either.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Dick. And good luck tonight.
Very good. Don, you had your hand up, I think.
Yeah, and maybe this question is as much for Joe Bertrand as it is for the folks from Northeast Vote, but with deferring the payments to 2020, the bulk of the payments to 2025, will that hit the same time that the bulk of the payments for Wakefield High School come online? And
Yes, assuming a lot of things.
okay,
If I can jump in, except that the Wakefield High School project will most likely be a debt exclusion.
Right.
This will
Going to
not.
go through our debt exclusion fund rather than from
Right.
okay.
the yearly output.
Okay.
Don, you all set?
Yeah.
Doug Butler. Nope. Doug, we can't hear you properly at all.
That always happens with him.
Evan,
Actually,
no comment.
it sounds quite
Squeaky
proper
Doug.
to me.
Actually, I think it
Doug.
sounds good.
Alvin the
Stop.
Chip, Alvin the
He has to
Chipmunk.
stop using that nitrous.
Yeah.
Or helium. It could be helium.
Doug, you want to
Better
try
than
again?
usual.
Or,
I'm sorry, guy. I probably missed this, but
Am I still squeaky?
hold on, is Doug, are you speak up a little? Go ahead.
Oh, am I still squeaky?
No,
Oh,
go
okay.
ahead.
Okay. Sorry, Evan. Just a quick question, like the money that we raise to pay this, do we raise it all as a collective of all the towns? Or is it just us raising it and paying for our share?
No, the way it works, Doug, under regional school law is the district is the borrowing entity. And so the regional school committee will borrow the money, that's why they have the financial advisor. And they'll do it and assume the responsibility for the debt. Your share of that yearly will be modified based upon small changes in enrollment. But the total debt each year, when it gets to, let's say, fiscal 26, is going to be a yearly debt of about 10.2 million. And that'll be done by the district, and you'll be paying that in addition to your operating assessment every year when the budget is forwarded to the to the finance committee. So you'll have two separate line items in the budget. One will be for the operating costs, which you have now, and you'll have a capital assessment, which will include your share of the debt service for that year.
Okay, I was just wondering, like, again, I think in line with maybe what Don was saying, like, in some ways, it's almost part of the money now. And, I'd almost rather it go to the 800 now and just be done in 2050 instead of 2053, but, whatever.
We should, I suggest you just save as much money as you can. You're doing a great job with free cash, and we can't assess you unless we're spending it. And we don't want to borrow it and run into arbitrage issues, as you know. So we'll borrow strategically, but I understand the concern. But I also understand how great it's going to be to live in Wakefield. You have a brand new Regional Voc Tech School for 50 years. You have a brand new Wakefield High School for 50 years. The value that's going to increase home values in your town is going to be astronomical. It's terrific.
Very good.
Why I say he's a lobbyist right there.
That's right.
I am not a lobbyist. Stop that. You get me in trouble, Steve.
Go ahead, Stefan.
I was just curious with the, I guess the combination of both the both schools getting built at or around the same time. Will there be one or two separate requests for Prop 2.5 overrides from the districts in each of the towns in the district?
Just so you know, decision of debt exclusion is respectfully reserved for your Board of Selectmen. And our understanding is many of these communities are not going to have debt exclusions because they can pay their smallest shares through, through the, a capital plan, for example. So that that isn't a decision for the regional school. We're not empowered to even make that suggestion or make that decision. But I will tell you, in Minuteman Tech's case, 7 of the 9 towns had debt exclusions after the fact for their share of the project. That was their decision. 2 of the towns didn't because they had, I think, money left over from Mayflower too, to be honest with you. So that's a decision exclusively for the selectmen and I assume in consultation with the town manager. But it is not an option for a decision for the regional school district.
I can jump in on that for Wakefield. On the vocational school project, I see no reason why we would have a debt exclusion for that. So we'll do that within our regular tax levy. And we're not asking for that at this point either.
Right, I was gonna, go ahead, Stefan, you gonna say something else?
Yep, just a follow-up question to a comment that was made earlier about the each of the town city assessments. Has there been, I guess with the school being built with the much larger footprints and student body, has there been any estimate as to what the new assessment will be or whatever that differential will be with the going from the old school to the new school?
There'll be no increase in the capital assessment. The 176 million can't go up. And the 300
the operating assessment.
Yeah, my assumption is if your student population goes up by 300 students and your assessment now is about 17.5 a kid, and your percent of that is 7.8%, then you can do the math. 4 years from now, once the school is built, and it'll probably take a couple of years afterwards because you don't accept all the students in 1 year. At some point down the road, the operating assessment per pupil is going to be a larger share. But it also means that it should have less of a burden on your own population. In other words, they may be coming to Northeast, there'll be less of a burden locally. But obviously the cost of utilities will come down and that sort of thing, but I'm not going to sugarcoat this. Vocational education is expensive. I mean, throughout the state, it's $23,000 per pupil. That's what it costs. And the state provides about 17.5% Chapter 78 for foundation budgets for both Wakefield as well as for Northeast, and the rest is borne by the local taxpayer. So there will be an increase, and it will be done over time, but it will be strictly based upon enrollment. But my assumption is, if you were planning this, you'd probably plan a 4% increase in school cost each year, and you'd figure, if you went from 100 students, let's say, up to 112 students, what does that mean? That's the way I'd start to plan this fiscally. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, thank you.
Great. And Steve, when you say, being able to manage the 800, that would be within our debt service budget, right? We would be probably in the debt service grouping.
I think we'd put it either in there or we'd put it in a spot like that. I don't know if we put it there or if we put it in our capital budget, or if we put it frankly in the voc budget, but it would be in, one of those three areas.
Yeah, Steve, I don't understand why we wouldn't do this debt exclusion. Like, I don't understand why we would want to have, like, why we'd want to fold an extra $800,000 into the budget. But that's a different fight for a different
We
day.
always could if we found we had to. I don't think we need to going forward, looking at the numbers, but.
Very good. More to come. Bill Boudry.
Yeah, I wanted to ask from a logistics perspective, the road behind June Circle, is it the intention that the Voc School students will only use that road?
I think, Kevin Nye goes on. So as you know, we do a transportation study on, which way our students go when they leave. And we're also going to try to balance it. I haven't looked at that specifically. Kevin Nigro, have you looked at anything related to that question?
I think we've factored in some people just don't listen and will go down Hemlock Road, but we anticipate the traffic flow to come in off of Upper Main and Farm Street. We'll do our best to sign and educate from day one so that people do take the burden off of Hemlock Road.
Right. And I think the other question is going to be when you design Wakefield High School, will your parking lot even come out to Hemlock Road? So that's also a factor that I know you'll consider, is you could exit right onto Main Street or where it's Farm Street rather. And, I think we're going to have to collaborate as the designing gets closer, both of our teams, and work out these questions. But it's definitely not set in stone yet either way.
The other comment or question I have is, full disclosure, I have a good friend and others on the committee, or former finance committee member who lives on June Circle. What consideration and listening is being done to the people who live on June Circle about that road coming right in back of their houses?
Right. So we've met with them on a couple of occasions. And I think Ted Nickley might have jumped on this call as well. He's the chairman of our building committee. And so we invited them up to the school. They met with our construction company. They met with our project manager, myself. They also were on some Zoom calls with us. We definitely addressed Ted Nickley, who has a lot of experience in this field, actually went out to the road himself. And, we don't feel like it's going to be a major impact, unlike, if you were building a school right next to a residential street. We know that the impact is inevitable. So they've reached out to, I know Kevin's been in contact with them from PMA on multiple occasions.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we got a call today, and we traded emails just this afternoon with the resident from June Circle on some of the financials.
Good, thanks. I mean, the main piece that we tried to get across is we want to be good neighbors. It's really important to us, in that, we would do everything possible to make sure that we limit you know, any interruption to their day, and that we keep them informed all along. And all we can do is try our best, but I think.
I'm
we're in a
just
good
curious, what's the
situation.
distance for those abutters that are, have houses that back up to the road? How far
They
away is it from
They
there?
don't back up to the road. If you take a look at that site plan, if you look where the power lines are, there's a kind of a fire road, I guess you'd call it an access road. We're just adjacent to, we run parallel to that. So it's several hundred feet to June Circle. So we run parallel to June Circle, not behind it. And there's also some discussion working with that traffic engineer, if this does warrant and pass for a full signal of entertaining putting a loop detector at June Circle so that neighbors wouldn't have to wait in a long queue to get out of the street. That's also been discussed as well.
Yeah,
Thank you, Kevin.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Very good. I don't see any more questions. Steve, if you have anything else to add,
I
or
just wanted to add that I don't think that for reimbursable account, it's around 71%, which is pretty good for reimbursable costs, and or 76%, I should say.
Yeah, legal.
76.8. And on the money, the ARPA funds that are going through the state, the town council did sign on a request to grant 100 million to the vocational school, which would be a really to our vocational school, 100 to each, which would bring the borrowing way down. They're already at 33 million, so 33%. I told our delegation they were a third of the way there today. I told the lieutenant governor they were a third of the way there today. So that brings those numbers down even more, which is very nice. So I'm pretty comfortable with this. They've been a really good neighbor of ours, and the other thing is that this is done on a per capita basis. So a student from Wakefield is going to be assessed for the construction, the same thing, same amount as a student from Chelsea, which is different on the operational end. And we talk about that a lot on that. So this is a very even, one-to-one comparison. So it seems to be pretty good, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think Mr. Kuzak's hand is up too.
yep,
Thank
I
you,
saw that.
Mr. Mayo. So I just want to add in that having gone through that intersection in front of the high school where all roads lead currently, just this morning, and tried to take the left to get into the high school, first of all those kids are going to be going to this school regardless of whether it's on one side of Hemlock or the other, right? So the traffic's going to be there. I think splitting it out to a second road, which is primarily used by the kids who are going to go to the Voc, will make a huge difference in the traffic going through that intersection at Hemlock and Farm. I think it'll just make things easier because we'll have, it's like what's currently going on with Albion going into North Ave because of the fact that Broadway is closed.
Don't say the B word. Come on.
Because Broadway is closed currently. Sorry. Having two outlets is just going to make it easier, I think, for everybody.
I would also imagine that most students from Chelsea, Revere, Malden, Saugus will take a right off of Farm Street and go up that new road before they even get to the high school.
Exactly.
Get to
That's the
Hemlock,
point.
or they get to the other June Circle or Stoneway or those others. So I think it'll actually be much better.
Brian, also, every one of the proposed designs for the new high school has changing of the Hemlock Road into a straight into that intersection instead of that crazy rigmarole that's there now.
Beautiful. Will there be a light there, do you think?
I don't know.
It's
I
possible.
assume so. But that's going to be straightened out. Almost everybody talks about that says that doesn't make any sense.
No, it does not.
Brian,
It is exciting. It's exciting in the morning, I'll tell you that.
Well, we try to give people challenges in this world. Right?
All right. Well, Steve, I guess on behalf of the Finance Committee, for the folks here from the Voc, we appreciate you joining us tonight and giving us the overview. And Charles, I'll keep an eye on you if I see you elsewhere, but I know you're not a lobbyist.
Yeah, but I will tell you this, just because I don't want to miss the 8:30 kickoff. The legislature right now, Steve, is in recess. And the amendment 723 to increase the share from 100 million to 300 million was filed by a number of reps.
Great.
And they're coming back out of recess at 9 o'clock. So now's the time to call those reps and ask them to make sure they contest, okay?
Our reps have already gone on record for it, so that's great.
I wouldn't mess with you, I'll tell you that. I'd do exactly as you told me.
Yeah.
Nice to see you again.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie,
Thank you, Mr.
David,
Chairman.
and Ed all. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye-bye.
Very good. So Steve, we have some things to vote on. There was also a reserve fund transfer doc, and I realize now I don't see it on the agenda. Was there stuff we needed to talk to on the reserve fund file
No.
you sent?
No, that might have been part of the year-end report.
Yes, okay, maybe it was.
Yeah.
Yep.
You already voted on that. Can't take it back now.
Yes, yeah, you're right. Very good. So then we have a spreadsheet that you all received showing the articles for town meeting, and we would need to review and vote on these articles, correct, Steve?
Correct. I think
Okay.
those will be fairly quick. Free cash, which is Article 2, use of free cash to balance the budget. We're looking to use $2.5 million. Reason being is because we will still use conservative estimates of local receipts going to the Department of Revenue. I think they might raise their eyebrows at us if we, moved up to pre-pandemic levels, although we're inching towards that for next fiscal year when we set that budget. So all things being equal, we're looking at $2.5 million for that. We kind of talked about that at the tri-board meeting as well. If there's any questions on that one. All right,
No questions that I
I'm
can
happy.
see.
Okay, Article 3 is Joe Bertrand's article on the high school.
No, it's not on the high school. It's on the public safety.
Public safety building. I'm sorry.
PSB.
Unfortunately, due to the construction costs that have occurred due to the pandemic that we're in, our estimates for the pre-pandemic were the construction costs were 9.6 million, which was passed by town meeting. Recent estimates have come in to the Permanent Building Committee that have changed that considerably. The basis for it is we've asked the estimators and our construction manager the basis for these increase in their costs, and essentially it's supply chain issues, labor shortages resulting from the pandemic, coupled with a very busy construction market, which has led to a significant short-term spikes. For example, some of the direct costs related to this project, structural steel pricing has increased 75% since December 2020, which was prior to our estimate. Metal deck pricing is up 100% since December 2020. Sheet metal is up 25% in the last 60 days, and probably we may even go more. Light gauge framing is up 25% in the last 60 days, plus you have to add another 25% just to hold the pricing. As a result of this, the construction estimates have gone out of sight. The estimate that we have now, which was total hard construction dollars, was 6.9 for this project. It has now come in at 9.2, an additional $2.3 million. We have added onto that additional contingencies, those construction and owner contingencies of additional 200,000. They're the reason we're at 2.5 million. That is what we're going to request at this time. However, I must add a little caution to this. Presently, the bids are out on the job. They are due Wednesday, November 3rd. We, the Permanent Building Committee, will be meeting on November 4th. We are hopeful that the costs that come in and the bids that come in will be under this $2.5 million figure. But we don't know that for sure, obviously. Once we get that, we're going to be meeting on Thursday night, the 4th. And Jim, I don't know if they do come in much higher. We may have to have a quick meeting before town meeting. We are hopeful that they will come under it. We also have built in that contingency. So even if it's over a little bit over 2.5, we will be okay with that contingency. But the bottom line is the costs have just escalated out of sight due to the pandemic. And we want to have this project done properly and not do it halfway. And the only way to do that is for the additional dollars to be granted at town meeting.
All right, when did you say you're gonna open the bids and have a good understanding?
Wednesday,
Wednesday, thank you.
November 3rd, we're gonna meet on the 4th. And if it comes out, I'll be in touch, Jim.
Okay.
I'll be in touch either way, maybe.
Very good. Yep.
All right.
Appreciate it. Number of questions. You want to go now? Yeah, might as well. Doug?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what's the other question is how much have we got signed contract bids out for the other 6.9 million? Like, I guess, is there a reason why we can't just delay the whole project? Like, why are we paying into the pandemic pricing? Why not just delay it 2 years?
I think the obvious answer to that is that the police department needs this work to be done now. We already delayed it 4 years, Doug, because of the vote and everything else. It is time to do it, and it's time to do it right.
I agree, and I think we agreed to do it. You know, you guys came in saying it was going to cost 9. If it's going to cost 15 now, that seems to me like a reason to say, like, no, I'm not doing it.
It's not going to cost 15. It's going to cost the additional 2.5. And we have a construction manager, Doug, and we're going to get what's known as a guaranteed maximum price. So that will be determined by the time these bids come in on Wednesday. We will have 85% of the maximum prices of the job.
We've never been psyched about the project to begin with, and less psyched about it as we see it going forward.
Doug, it's tough to hear you. I don't know if your mic is covered or something, but you're kind
Oh,
of.
sorry, I'm probably just sitting too far away, so I wasn't going to give you the full up close of me with the cold, but no, it's more just I guess I'm frustrated over, you know, there's a reason why it didn't get put through a couple of years ago, and one of the ways that it got put through last time is that this notion of how much it was going to cost. So like now coming back and being like, oh, actually we need 50% more, that seems like a tough sell.
Dan, you had your hand up?
I do. On this, maybe a question for Kevin. I'm assuming that this is going to be borrowed funds. The spreadsheet doesn't show it.
That's correct. It's going to be borrowed.
Thank
And
you.
I sent out a second spreadsheet to the entire group. The first one might have been an error. It is borrowed funds.
Yeah, I thought this was the second one, but yeah, regardless, borrowed
Yeah, it
funds.
says borrowed funds there, Dan.
Okay, thank you.
Bill?
So what happens when we go to town meeting, and obviously this has been a tough one over time. What if people vote no? What, are we back to square one?
Yeah, we'll probably then, it'll cost 18 million by the time we could redo it again. Do you anybody really think the costs are going to go down? I doubt it. They haven't yet. And
What
with the
about
infrastructure, well, Doug, let me finish, okay?
Yeah.
With the infrastructure bill going in, there's going to be a more construction market going out there and prices going up. So I suspect that these costs are not going to go down in the future. If you think they're going to go down, then I don't think that's a realistic.
But we would
statement
be,
to make.
we would be back to square one.
Yeah.
Restarting the whole process.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And
Thank you.
we attempted when these numbers first came out, when the first pandemic hit, we attempted to see where we could, not do the Sally Port, not do this, not do that. That just, it doesn't make any sense to do it. There's no reason to do a half-assed job. Let's do it right.
I mean, there is a chance, correct, that the, for example, the lumber spike has come back down again, right? The,
Not as much as you'd hope. Maybe the lumber, but the structural steel hasn't.
no,
That's-
I understand that, but at the
Yeah.
same time, some of these are artificial temporary spikes. It's to be determined, but anyway.
I asked that same question, and most of the estimators and them, yeah, there may be some, when you go to Home Depot, the price may be a little lower, but not much. Some of the guys that have to do it, that have to get the stuff, they don't anticipate a great lower, but we'll find out on Wednesday. That's the advantage we have here. On Wednesday, we're going to know whether these numbers are lower than the 2.5 million extra.
Joe, Jim, can I ask
Yeah.
one more question of Joe or perhaps Steve? Last year with the police subcommittee, finance committee subcommittee meeting with the police, the chief indicated that given all the building and growth in the town, particularly around apartments, that in the next couple of years, he'd be asking for 4 more police officers. And I'm just wondering, I haven't asked this before, if, is that accommodated in this new build out?
Yes, there's
That growth?
it's up for 60 police officers,
Okay, thank you.
and administrative and
Don?
Joe, if I remember right, overall, it was a pretty modest increase to the tax rate. Still well under the 2.5 tax levy. So this 2.5 million, how much more would that increase the, how much more of an increase would it be?
it's for the debt exclusion. And Steve, how much was it? About 75,000 a year, something like that?
Yeah, but this again will not, this will not increase the tax rate.
Yeah,
This is within 2.5.
and
It's right, it's within 2.5, but the amount that it's going to increase the rate is pretty.
it's going to increase the debt exclusion, right, Steve?
Correct. It won't
And at
increase
about-
the rate. It'll increase the amount we pay out
On the
Okay.
debt exclusion, about 75,000 a year.
in that ballpark, yeah.
Okay.
Evan?
I just, maybe this is a little bit of a 30,000 foot question, Joe, but your response to Doug earlier was the police department needs this project. And so I'm trying to assess the need here. And so I'd sort of like to know what metrics are you using to assess the need? Like, is the building unsafe, or how long before it is unsafe? Like I tend to, inflation's a thing right now, and it's probably going to be a thing, to your point, Joe. Like, I don't want to, like, if I were a betting man, I'm probably not betting on prices going down, but there's like some good indicators that would suggest that they could, and this may not be the time to lock in, a construction project if we can avoid it and delay it by a few years. And so, like, I'd like to understand the need and how dire it is. Like, what are we losing if we delay it by a few years?
Right now, I mean, if we have to go through this whole thing where the lobby is difficult for anyone who has an emergency to contact the police. This project will move the dispatch people from the second floor, which was what was done 24 years ago, or 20 years ago, because that was what was the practice at the time. They believed that dispatch should be not disturbed at all by anybody, and that they should be in a cocoon and to deal with dispatch. This would move the dispatch downstairs. So if there's an emergency that a person comes running into the lobby, they would be able to be handled by the people in dispatch because they will be there. There is also tremendous space concerns regarding that building. There is also different, some of the MEP systems are also reaching their life, shall we say. All of this was explained, and I don't have all of the things. There's a whole list of things about it, the project that needs to be done. Prior to this, we had no social, clinician. There was no social workers there. There was none of that stuff. When the building was you must remember is that 20 some years ago when we redid the building, we did it for the fire department. We did nothing for the police department. And the fire department was what was needed to be done because the fire station was essentially in horrible shape and literally the floor was not even holding the fire trucks anymore. So that's what was done. This is to get the police station up to 21st century policing.
So thanks, Joe. Steve, do you have anything to add to that in terms of? I'm not, frankly, and Joe, love you mean it, but I'm not hearing a convincing argument for a dire need here.
I think there's problems with the HVAC system and the roof and the protection of the 911 system. We're very concerned about whether that could, be wiped out because the generator doesn't kick on and things like that. But
Armory, the armory too.
And the armory and the way that evidence is collected and protected. There's all of those. There just isn't the room for that. But I think the biggest reason is that, and I think Joe hit it on the head, and this was discussed before, the building as configured does not meet the needs of the population in giving effective police services to the community. Talk about
Is that just because of the lobby, Steve?
No, not just because of the lobby. There are no
Like,
private
I want to
rooms.
know then how many times somebody comes to the lobby of our police department with an emergency.
A lot. If you have the chief here, he'd
They
tell you
come
that
to
they
the
haven't a
lobby
lot.
with an emergency. A
Yeah,
lot.
Yeah.
Actually,
Also,
yeah, quite
More
often.
or less than the number of fires that they go out.
Forgive me, forgive me, but it seems like there's a simpler solution to the lobby problem than building a new lobby. Like, I've been in there and it's like, I understand it's not ideal. And I'm not telling you that like this project isn't necessary, but I'm like very sympathetic to the argument that Doug's making about like prices are very volatile right now. And we've seen what could be artificial spikes. And so like, why lock it in right now? If I think the police department does a very good job. And so if the facility's lending to functional policing right now, maybe we can get a better price on this in a few years. And so I'm just sort of sympathetic to Doug's argument. And I'm nothing that's been said is convincing me that we need to do this right now.
Except that I've never heard of prices coming down over my tenure. Whenever I delayed anything, it always cost more.
You could be right, Steve. It's a fair point.
I mean,
years
think
ago,
about it.
yeah.
We think about it, and had this passed before, it would have cost $8 million and it would have been done by now. We had just in 2 years, in the 3 years from that, it went from 8 million to 9.6. And then the pandemic hit. So in that normal time period, where there was pre-pandemic, where there was no labor shortages, no supply shortages, nothing like that, it went from 8 to 9.6. So do you think realistically that it's going to be cheaper in the future? I doubt that.
Have fun.
I just wanted to comment on pricing. I guess I can completely understand that the labor costs associated with construction will go up, and I probably don't anticipate that going down anytime soon. However, when we're talking about raw materials and resources, those price swings definitely go down, and they do have definitely negative price impacts to construction, and that's just a historical facts.
Very good. Thank you. Bill, you have a question again?
No, I don't have a question. I mean, I only have a comment from the perspective of, the questions around why do we need this and things like that. For me, I went into this last year very, skeptical. I think, the whole public safety building is, too much mass in one area, but it is what it is. But I think that the chief presented a very compelling argument, if you will, or reasoning for the why. And I don't think it's fair to be putting that on Joe. The chief, we went through an extensive and exhaustive PowerPoint presentation with pictures of what some of the areas was and some of the areas that Joe and Steve have addressed. There's no doubt in my mind it's needed. To me, it's a shame. The whole, it is what it is in Wakefield with that public service building and the footprint it's on, but, unfortunately, or I think the need is there. I think it's been demonstrated. So,
Very good. I think this is just a precursor for Joe's meeting a Saturday and a half from now, but it's a healthy discussion, obviously, with us, and nothing wrong with it. Brian, you have a comment?
I do. Is there any reason not to get the police chief back in here to answer the questions again for those who have them?
Right now?
Well,
I'm not saying this moment, I'm saying at a time that's appropriate, so that, they can have it out with the person who has all the facts. I think that's it. Not to say that you don't, Joe. But, as was stated previously, he did a great job of laying out the need, and it's more than one or two or five things. There were a bunch of things that he went through, the details of which I don't have, and it might be worth our while to ask him to come back and review that for the folks who have questions.
Well, we'll certainly have
we
a
could
town meeting.
we could do that. I think, my observation is for the folks on this call, if you were behind it before, you made a reason why. If you weren't behind it before, you made a reason why. And none of those reasons have changed other than the economics. And you're assessing a value, I think, now based on what I would hope to be was your prior mindset. So your value is diminished, your value is increased, but all of the conditions are unchanged. It's a financial value statement, I think. But could we hold another meeting, Brian? If the group feels necessary to hold a meeting, I have no problem trying to see if the chief's available and have another meeting between now and the 6th, which is next week. But we could do that. Teray?
Thank you. I agree with Joe. I mean, I remember the chief giving the presentation at the town meeting. I think it was last November, and I found it to be very compelling. So just like you just said, Jim, the reasons why I supported it then remain the same now. I think it's needed, and I recognize that, materials costs can't decrease over time, but the increasing labor costs, I just don't like the idea of rolling the dice and hoping that we get a cheaper cost in several years. And also but I think the impact on the debt service is what, $70,000. To me, that's not so significant. So I would prefer just moving forward with this project now and getting it done. We've been debating a town for 4 or 5 years. Since I moved into town in 2016, it seems like it's been the big hot issue. And I think that it's time to just get it done. And we have to spend a little more money, but it's worth it.
Good, thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Steve, I don't have the updated sheet. I apologize, but let's keep going down the list for now.
Yep. Library contract is next. I'm sorry, I did not have this ready to go in the spring town meeting, but we do have it going now. It's a 3-year deal. The cost of living increases are consistent, actually very consistent, the same as with every other union that I negotiate with. Fiscal year 22, the year we're in right now, 3% cost of living. And then for the next 2 fiscal years, it drops down to 2.5%, just like the other unions are that I negotiated with. The cost for this year is $30,000.
Very good. You doing library hours as well?
Yep. The next one is to supplement the library budget by $30,000 for library, bringing back the very popular Sundays. That'll be January 1st, 2022. Will open through June 30th, 2022 from 1 to 5 p.m. Cost here is also $30,000. They're both like 29 and change. They're not exactly the same, but 30,000 is pretty even. So this is a very popular item, and we decided that with our good fortune, we could bring it back.
Yeah, the pizza's ready.
Question? No.
All right, you want to do the Broadway item
I
and
can
then
do the
we'll
last one, yeah.
open it up for questions?
I know that if someone just said it said 60 on my sheet, I sent out a new one. That's 30 and 30. I sent it out to the group later, so that was my mistake. See, Kevin was in parts unknown, like he said, and I had to do this myself, so that's what happens. The bottom line was correct, but not as good. The last one is Broadway, the B word that Mr. Cusack mentioned before. So we do have and I hope I'm not coming back for any more money on this. As you all know, ad nauseum, we went through the entire quiet zone issue with the trains. We made a number of changes to some of the areas, including Broadway, to get us back under the quiet zone threshold from the Federal Railroad Association. And that just gets us under. We will be reviewed again in 3 years. And the best way to preserve that quiet zone would be to put quad gates, and quad gates mean they come down in both directions. There's 4 gates, so you can't kind of go around the gates, which, believe it or not, people do, and it rates that track much safer. In the transportation bond bill, Representative Moulton has $1.25 million in for an earmark for Wakefield's quad gates. That's been voted on by the House, needs to be voted on by the Senate. We anticipate that happening. That will get us almost the whole way there. Looking for $400,000 for free cash for any extra work that I need in that area. Plus that whole section of Broadway, although it will be paved curb to curb, I want to take all of Broadway from North Ave to Albion and redo the sidewalks the whole way. Those sidewalks are certainly in need of being done, has nothing to do with National Grid. There are a need to be done. In fact, some of those sidewalks were done right after the Great Depression. And I think there are still some metal plates in there that even say that. So that's a $400,000 project all the way in. I think that's a good item to spend it on. It's good for that neighborhood. Will also help those businesses there as we see more walkability, more people walking from Foundry Street over to those businesses on Broadway, kind of part of our overall plan. So I'm all the way, I'm in on that.
Very good. Dennis.
Yes, as far as this money goes, is there another way, I'm saying with the feds, because when we originally had gatekeepers, I'm probably the only historian here left that remembers the gatekeepers. For us to get away from the gatekeepers, the MBTA at that point asked us to go and have them put in automatic gates. It wasn't the town of Wakefield's cost. It was the B&M Railroad that we had to get permission to do any right-of-way work in there, and they paid all the costs to put in those gates.
Yep.
Originally, they had quad gates by the gatekeeper. They went and got the gates approved by the half gates, I call them. And since then, I mean, even the town of Reading doesn't have gates, and we have to come up with horns going off, and I don't understand why. Can it be we petition for a lower speed of the trains through our entrance into the town? Maybe that's why Reading don't have any gates going across Route 28 when they just redid Route 28. And they don't have horns going off. They have the normal clanger lines that we used to have going across Main Street. But why can't we ask for a reduction in the train speed and see if that lowers the requirements of the feds for going with the horn? I think that's part of the problem, is the speed of the train are creating a different effect than it was back when they originally put in the original gates. Can you answer that, Steve?
I can. My understanding is that I don't think that's available. Maybe Mr. Boudry knows a little bit, being in the train business. I do know this, that MBTA will not pay for that. We have to coordinate the work with them in the tracks. MBTA is not the only company that uses those rails. There's freight trains, there's Amtrak that comes through, there's all these different companies that we had to notify. I'd love to think that the MBTA would pay for something. My understanding is that they pay for nothing. That's been, confirmed through our engineering department, everything they're telling us. I don't know what Reading's issue is. Each town is a little bit different. We do have, maybe because we've had more accidents on the tracks than they have, I don't know. That adds into our rating, because we had a couple of accidents in that area. One just recently, although that person jumped the tracks way down there, not at the crossing. So I'd love to think we could, Dennis, but that's not my information. Sorry. Maybe
way
Billy
I-
knows more. Billy can make me a liar.
I understand that going into Reading, they have to come in at a slower speed because it's really the dead end in most instances, other than when they go on to Havel, which is not every train. And in Wakefield, coming out of Melrose Inn, it's a speed lane coming through till they get here. And I honestly think that it is a speed issue that is drawing the question of the feds as to, maybe why we have more accidents, because they're coming at a greater speed. So I think the speeds have gone up since they originally did it. And do they have to increase petitions with the feds to increase their rail speed? And if so, don't we have a say in it? These are the questions I need Tom Mullen or somebody to answer.
Yeah. I think it's our town engineer more than anything else has done a lot of this work, but those are all new information to me, Dennis. I've not heard that in any of my discussions with the FRA or with the FRA mainly. So,
right. Billy?
Maybe Billy can save me.
I would only offer, and I'm not going to purport myself to be an expert in this, but all over the commuter rail system, whether it be local or national, the customers are demanding more speed. They're just demanding more frequent service, more, faster service between stations. So I don't think Wakefield's going to get ahead of, stopping increasing speeds along the way. And it's all MBTA. Nothing to do with anybody else but the MBTA. It's their track, which, as Steve mentioned, is used by Amtrak and freight railroads sometimes as well.
Is it their track or the B&M leased to the MBTA?
It's the MBTA owns that track. B&M doesn't exist as an entity, Dennis. It hasn't for years. MBTA owns the track. They bought all the assets of the Boston Main Railroad back in the 70s.
Okay, because that's when it was
Oh,
originally.
I know. No, they own it all. Absolutely.
Do we
100%.
have anything in writing from back then when they petitioned to put the gates in? As to what they were asking from us, that we can find whether it's something that is legal, that they can't do anything unless we give them permission. And as with the MBTA, I wouldn't trust anything being swept under the rug for their purposes. I think we ought to be able to go back and find out what got proposed at town meeting to go from not putting the gatekeepers up, which we resisted for years with Forest Street. That was the last one to go. All the other ones went first. And we had a say in that. And I don't know why we don't have a say on what's going on with this, and the MBTA has sole rights to decide whether we have to pay the cost because of this.
Well, this has gone beyond an MBTA issue. It's become a Federal Railroad Administration issue.
Because of the speed request. That's what I think is the problem.
I think the Federal Railroad and MBTA really don't care about, doing this for a quiet zone, which is what we're doing it for. I think, they just as soon blow the horns. They don't care. I mean, that's what it's really for.
Right. And I think, Dennis, these questions are probably better suited for the engineer, the town engineer. He's been he and that crew have been battling for months, Steve, correct?
Right, oh, yeah,
But they're battling under current conditions,
right.
not what the original conditions were. I want somebody to go back and find out the original conditions to give up the gatekeepers and what they promised to be allowed to give up the gatekeepers, and that's what they should be honoring. That didn't go away.
Right,
I don't see that happening, getting anything out of that, Dennis, but I'll ask our engineer about it.
Well, all I'm saying is it may get them to pay the cost.
Yeah, well, if they do, then we don't spend the money, but I doubt that will happen.
right.
Okay.
All right. I don't see anybody else's hand up. Any other questions, thoughts? Anybody?
I think Doug put it in it.
Sorry, I just have one more, and I'm just thinking this through. Like, I'm trying to think, you know, I know you mentioned $75,000 extra, Steve, but I don't understand how $12 million turns into $75,000 a year.
No, we already bonded the other, that's just for the extra.
I don't understand how $2.5 million turns into $75,000.
Probably a little bit more, it's like divided by 30, what do you have it at?
I think it's probably more like 200.
What number, what are we referring to? I'm sorry.
It's more just me trying to understand how he came up with saying that it only cost $75,000.
83, I'm sorry, 85.
What is that number again, please? Refresh my memory.
I would
The
say
cost of what?
it's 85-ish
For what?
for the $2.5 million extra increase on
Oh, the public safety building.
building.
Thank you.
Annually. That's
Doug,
annually.
you went back around. I needed to know where you were.
Yeah, no. I was more just speaking hypothetically. That's on the public safety building.
Yeah.
I don't like Steve. That's not on 30 years. Like 30 years is 3% is like 125.
2.5.
You're right, it's not,
divided by
it's
30.
not 30 years, it's 29.7. I just did the math.
I'm just gonna say, I just did the math and it comes out to $83,851.
Yeah.
Nobody else do any more math, please.
No math. I was told there would be no math on this group.
Billy Carroll lied to you.
Okay. Doug's putting his hand down. Yes, no? Thank you. All right, so we need to vote on these articles, Steve, correct?
I'd love it if you would, yes.
And the only article, I looked at the updated sheet, the only article is 2.5 borrowing. The rest of the money is coming from,
Free cash.
Free cash, yes,
right?
correct.
Joe, you want to run through the
I
articles?
do. Regarding Article 2, I move that we approve Article 2 for the use of $2.5 million out of free cash.
Second,
Who seconded that? Dennis? Okay.
Dennis did.
Yep.
Any discussion? No additional discussion. All those in favor for Article 2, 2.5 million from free cash.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No opposition. Article, go ahead, Joe, sorry.
Article 3, I move the sum of $2.5 million to be borrowed by the town for the purposes of Article 3.
Second.
Dennis, second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of Article 3 for Public Safety Building to borrow 2.5 million?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Three, sorry, 1, 2, 3. You got those? Keep your hand up, please.
I have Kenny, Chase, and Butler opposed.
Steve, you're used to recording no votes next to Kenny, right?
I usually am, yes. That's why I said you first. Everybody else was a yes?
I'll have you know, I'm the only guy who voted like for the marijuana about 5 or 6 years
I know
ago.
you did. That we didn't even have a vote on that. Everybody else is yes?
It was everybody else, yes. That was my
Yes.
understanding, yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. Go ahead, please.
I move approval. There's no money, right, Steve?
No money, it's just approving the
I
project.
move we approve we move for an approval of Article 4 for the vocational school.
Second?
Second.
No, that was Brian and Doug, Dennis, sorry. Any discussion, Article 4? Article 4 is moved for the approval of vocational school. All those
Mr.
in
Chairman, I'm
favor?
sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
Does this preclude, I mean, if we pass this, does this preclude the option of a debt exclusion, or is that a decision we make later?
We could make that later at any time. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, it's really, okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Discussion. Motion before you then is for Article 4 for the vocational school to approve. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No
That's
opposition.
Unanimous. Thank you.
Joe?
Article 5, I move $30,000 out of free cash for the purposes of the library contract in Article number 5.
Second.
Then a second. Any discussion? All those voting then, what we're voting for is Article 5, library contract, $30,000 be from free cash. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No opposition. Joe?
For the purposes of Article 6, I move the sum of $30,000 out of free cash for the purposes of library Sunday hours.
Second.
Seconded by Dennis. Any discussion on Article 6, library Sunday hours? Motion before you is Article 6, library Sunday hours, $30,000 from free cash. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No opposition.
Article 7, I move the sum of $400,000 out of free cash for the purposes of Article 7 from the Broadway scenario. Best you can call it.
Second? Any second?
Second.
That was Dawn. Thank you. Discussion. Motion before you for Article 7 is for the Broadway Railroad crossing, the sum of $400,000 from free cash. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? No opposition. Total sum, free cash, 2.96 and 2.5 from borrowing, it looks like, correct?
Correct.
Very good.
Oh, no, 3,000,020, I'm sorry. From free cash.
296 from free cash.
296?
Yep.
Yeah,
You're
Kevin,
correct, I'm sorry, 296,
Yep, there's an updated doc. Very good.
updated.
Okay. We had a enjoyable evening. Committee comments. Anyone? Stefan?
Yeah, I had one comment I wanted to make earlier on in the review of the fiscal year budget. We had a substantial encumbrance coming from I think the school, and this was the second year in a row. It would be helpful, I think, for the committee to review, I guess, the details behind those encumbrances. And I'm not sure if there's any other point in time other than this annual meeting where we get to see this information. And there's no details behind it, and it just raises a lot of questions.
Yeah, understood. And we did speak about it earlier a little bit when we were reviewing the overall. I don't think it's an unrealistic request. I know I can say that either Brian or somebody may have talked about it in the subcommittee for the schools, but you wouldn't have been part of that in previous years. So we can make a request, Steve, I think, to understand that through the school committee, right?
Yeah, in fact, I'll try to get you at least a memo on that
Right.
before town meeting.
All right. Stefan?
Yeah, just one other thing too.
Yep.
I brought this up during the reviews of the previous budgets last spring. But in a lot of the budgets, there are these budget transfer line items. that were created with some sort of logic behind them. And a lot of those, I think the school has quite a number of those. And I'm not sure if I guess the logic behind those have become stale over time. I'm not sure if we've looked at those in a while.
Are you referring to the schools in particular or other departments as well?
Yeah, the schools in particular have, I think, quite a number of those. But I'll just give you, for instance, since I'm on the IT subcommittee, I believe there's a budget transfer line associated with the number of line drops.
Oh, okay, okay.
And I know that was created. I guess the thought behind that was created a few years ago. And I know, since then, I think the Walton school was built. There's been a number of other changes, but that's just one of them. The school has a number of others. I'm not sure, I guess, over time, if those things get updated or if we update those on a regular basis, but if it has been a few years, it may be a good time to take a look at those.
So you asking to look at when you say you're looking at the chargebacks, I guess.
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
Okay, that makes perfect sense, yeah.
So we'll get some information associated with those, Steve.
And how we did it, and if we need to change, look at the methodology again.
Right.
Exactly.
Jim, did you send out subcommittee stuff? Yeah.
I have not sent out subcommittee assignments yet. No, I'll talk about that in 2 minutes. Bill?
So that was one of my questions. My other question was, there are 2 openings on the FinCom, I believe, and it,
Yep.
wondering what the statuses of those are.
Sure,
Positions being
you
filled?
stole my thunder for closing
Oh,
comments.
sorry. Sorry
No,
about
it's all good, both of you. So I had met with Doug. Doug and I met to talk about subcommittees, as he is not the co-chair, whatever his title is. He's the assistant chair. And I sent an email out with some information to all of you, and I did get some feedback from folks about subcommittees, desires and things like that, which is helpful. I had hoped that we would have interviewed and been able to add to the team so I could get out the updated subcommittees. And the latest information hot off the press just this evening is trying to do interviews next week. And it looks like possibly one the week after, unfortunately. But we have 2 openings and 2 candidates that we'll be discussing. We have kind of working with Bill Carroll, getting that scheduled is kind of where we're at. So I expect to get those done, and I expect to get the subcommittees updated. I can update the subcommittees with the vacancies, but I was hoping to just get names on there. So that'll be a couple of weeks out. And I don't think it would have too big of an impact, but that's the latest.
Thank you.
Brian?
I just want to say that robust and enthusiastic conversation is a good thing in this context, and I'm glad that we're all willing to participate fully in the process.
Very good. Thank you. Any other committee comments?
I'll just say that the Honorable Mr. Sherman ought to ask his Green Bay football team to step up their offensive game tonight. It doesn't look so good right now. Not a first down yet, Dan. Not a first down yet.
I was going to mention that, Evan. It seems like the Cardinals are ahead. Oh, geez, son of a gun.
They just got three first downs or midfield. They're moving.
Yeah,
they're moving.
midfield, and that's it, Dan. Don't worry.
Nice. And to your point, Brian, I will say, 100% attendance tonight from the committee. I always appreciate people making the time to get here.
Keeping your record going, Mr. Chairman, I think.
Yeah, it is. It's how you keep the meeting going, Steve, that brings everybody back.
I don't know about that.
No, Jim, it's your charisma.
Well,
Wow.
we're 0 for 2 on that, I think.
That's what my mother tells me. My mother tells me I have charisma.
Excellent.
Mine too.
Yeah, at least someone does, Steve.
I know, well, that's all right.
Okay, so we have no other meeting at this point. We have a town meeting a week from Saturday. If you can make the meeting, we'll see you there. We sent the warrant out in the packet, I believe, for your information. We didn't go over that, obviously. And if we need a meeting, for some reason through the Permanent Building Committee, we'll be in touch.
Correct.
Steve, anything else? Anyone? Very good. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Very good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you,
Thanks,
team.
everybody. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks all.